As we grow older, something shifts within us. The things that once felt urgent, career ambitions, social status, keeping up with expectations, start to lose their grip. What truly matters becomes clearer: peace, happiness, and the freedom to live life on our own terms. But while we might seek tranquility in our golden years, not everyone around us respects that journey. Some people, even family members, bring more stress than joy, more guilt than love, and more exhaustion than fulfillment. And if we're not careful, they can quietly drain our emotional and spiritual energy before we even realize it. Have you ever left a family gathering feeling completely depleted, like all the joy had been sucked out of you? Or found yourself dreading a phone call from a certain relative because you know it's going to be nothing but complaints, demands, or unnecessary drama? It's not just in your head. Some relationships, especially as we get older, become burdens rather than blessings. That's not to say we should abandon family or turn our backs on those in need. But in Buddhism, there is a powerful teaching. True compassion must always be paired with wisdom. Being kind does not mean sacrificing your well-being. And love does not mean tolerating toxicity. Buddhism teaches us that all relationships are rooted in karma, attachment, and suffering. The people in our lives, especially those closest to us, are not there by chance. Every connection is the result of past actions, shared experiences, and unresolved lessons. Some relationships help us grow, others keep us stuck in cycles of pain and obligation. The challenge is learning to recognize the difference. If we cling too tightly to unhealthy attachments out of guilt or duty, we end up suffering in silence, trapped by the fear of letting go. So here's the big question: are there certain family members we should keep our distance from for the sake of our peace? The answer is yes. Not because we lack love, but because love without boundaries leads to self-destruction. There are people in every family who bring constant drama, endless financial demands, or emotional manipulation. And if we don't set limits, we risk spending our later years in a cycle of resentment, exhaustion, and regret rather than the peace and joy we deserve. Today, we're diving deep into this delicate but necessary conversation. We'll explore 6 types of relatives who can quietly erode your happiness after 60. And most importantly, we'll look at how Buddhist wisdom can help us navigate these relationships without guilt, without anger, and without unnecessary suffering. Some of these might be obvious. Others might force you to take a hard look at relationships you never questioned before. And trust me, number 5 might shock you. So stick with me. And let's begin. 1. The drama queen: how gossip and conflict create negative karma. We've all been there, sitting across from a relative who thrives on chaos, watching as a simple conversation escalates into a dramatic spectacle. Maybe it starts with an innocent comment, something small and insignificant. But before you know it, voices rise, accusations fly, and somehow, you're caught in the middle of an emotional storm you never signed up for. It's exhausting, isn't it? You walk away feeling completely drained, like the weight of their problems has now become your own. And the worst part? They make you feel as if you're the problem for not engaging enough, not caring enough, or not reacting the way they wanted. As we get older, we start valuing peace more than ever. Life is too short to waste on unnecessary arguments, on carrying burdens that aren't ours to bear. But what do we do when the drama isn't just coming from outside sources but from within our own family? That's where things get tricky. We feel obligated to listen, to help, to be there. And while compassion is important, so is protecting our own well-being. The Buddha taught that not all words are created equal. Some words heal, while others harm. Some words bring clarity, while others bring confusion. And when words are used recklessly, when they become weapons rather than bridges, they create suffering. Not just for others, but for ourselves. The drama queen relative is an expert at stirring conflict. They magnify every inconvenience, turn minor issues into personal betrayals, and live for the tension that arises from emotional chaos. They gossip. They spread half-truths. And they seem to derive a strange satisfaction from pitting people against each other. And the cycle repeats again and again, because drama isn't just something that happens to them. It's something they actively seek. It becomes their identity, their fuel, their way of maintaining attention and control. But let's take a step back for a moment. Why does this type of behavior feel so especially harmful after 60? Because at this stage of life, our time, energy, and mental health become more precious than ever. Chronic stress isn't just an inconvenience, it's a direct threat to our well-being. Studies have shown that long-term emotional stress can weaken the immune system, increase inflammation in the body, and contribute to conditions like high blood pressure, heart disease, and even cognitive decline. Every time we allow ourselves to be dragged into unnecessary conflict, we're not just sacrificing a moment of peace, we're slowly harming ourselves on a deeper level. And it's not just physical health that suffers. Drama drains the mind. It takes away from the things that actually bring fulfillment: quiet mornings, meaningful conversations, personal passions, deep relationships based on trust and love. Instead of spending time cultivating joy, we find ourselves wrapped up in problems that aren't even ours. We replay conversations in our heads. We stress over things that were said. We get emotionally invested in conflicts that serve no real purpose. And the irony? The drama queen moves on to their next source of entertainment while we're left emotionally exhausted. The Buddha was clear about the power of speech. He warned against idle chatter, gossip, and divisive words, not because they are simply rude, but because they are destructive. Words shape the reality we live in. They can create suffering or relieve it. When we engage in negative speech, we don't just harm others, we pollute our own minds. Every time we indulge in gossip, every time we participate in unnecessary drama, we reinforce a habit of negativity, creating a mental landscape that is filled with stress, judgment, and tension. So how do we break free from the cycle? How do we deal with a drama-prone relative without letting them take over our peace? The first step is awareness. Recognize that their behavior is not about you, it's about them. Their need for conflict, for validation, for attention, it all stems from their own suffering, their own insecurities. And once you see it for what it is, you can begin to detach. This doesn't mean cutting them off completely, although, in some cases, limiting contact may be necessary. Instead, it means learning to engage differently. The Buddha taught mindful speech, speaking only when words are true, necessary, and kind. If a conversation starts leading toward gossip, redirect it. If they are fishing for drama, don't take the bait. Sometimes, the most powerful response is silence, not in an act of rejection, but as a refusal to fuel the fire. And when detachment isn't enough, boundaries become essential. Just because someone is family does not mean they have unlimited access to your time and energy. If their presence disrupts your peace, it's okay to step back. It's okay to say, I don't have the space for this conversation right now. It's okay to let calls go unanswered, to decline invitations, to choose where and how you engage. Peace is not something that happens by accident, it is something we must actively protect. Finally, the most profound shift we can make is internal. Because even if we distance ourselves, even if we refuse to engage, the true test comes in how we respond internally. Can we learn to see them with compassion instead of resentment? Can we recognize that their suffering is what drives their behavior, that their need for conflict comes from their own inner turmoil? This doesn't mean excusing their actions, but it does mean freeing ourselves from anger. Because anger, much like drama, is another chain that binds us. At the end of the day, we cannot change others. We cannot force a drama queen to suddenly value peace. Nor can we convince them to see the harm in their ways. But we can choose how much power they have over us. We can choose to protect our peace, to walk away from unnecessary conflict, to cultivate a life that is rooted in wisdom rather than reaction. And that choice, that is where our true power lies. 2. The Money Leech, the Buddhist view on generosity with wisdom. We all want to help the people we love. It's natural. When a family member is struggling, our first instinct is to reach out, to offer comfort, to do whatever we can to ease their burden. That's the heart of generosity, the desire to give, to support, to uplift. And in many ways, generosity is one of the most beautiful expressions of love. It's an act of selflessness, a way of putting someone else's needs before our own. In Buddhism, dana, giving, is one of the highest virtues, a way to cultivate good karma, reduce attachment, and live with an open heart. But what happens when generosity turns into obligation? When the act of giving, which should bring joy, instead brings stress, resentment, and exhaustion? There's a certain type of relative who seems to always be in financial trouble. No matter how much you help them, it's never enough. They have a new emergency every month, a crisis that only you can fix. They borrow money and conveniently forget to pay it back. They remind you of all the times you helped before, as if your generosity is an unspoken contract, something you are now bound to continue indefinitely. And worst of all, they know exactly how to manipulate your emotions, making you feel selfish or unkind if you refuse. It starts subtly. Maybe it's a small loan here, a little assistance there. But over time, it grows into something more, an expectation, a pattern, a dynamic that is difficult to escape. And suddenly, you find yourself in a position where saying no feels harder than saying yes, even though every yes chips away at your peace of mind. After 60, financial security becomes more important than ever. This is the time when you should be focusing on your well-being, on enjoying the life you worked so hard to build. You may be living on a fixed income, budgeting for medical care, or planning for the future. Every dollar matters. Every decision you make about money should be made with care. And yet, the Money Leech relative doesn't see it that way. To them, your resources are limitless, not because they actually are, but because they refuse to take responsibility for their own financial well-being. And that is where the real danger lies. Giving endlessly to someone who refuses to be responsible with money is not generosity, it's enabling. It's not helping them grow. It's keeping them stuck in a cycle of dependency. The Buddha taught that true generosity uplifts both the giver and the receiver. When generosity is paired with wisdom, it creates abundance. But when giving is done out of guilt, pressure, or obligation, it creates suffering for both parties. Think of it this way: if a child refuses to learn how to tie their shoes, and every day you continue tying them for them, have you truly helped them? Or have you simply encouraged their belief that they don't need to try? Money, like anything else, is a tool that should be used to empower, not to trap. If you are constantly bailing out a financially irresponsible relative, you are not teaching them to be independent, you are teaching them that they don't have to be. And that is where resentment begins to build. At first, you give freely, but over time, you start to feel unappreciated, frustrated, even used. You notice how easily they come to you for help, yet how rarely they make an effort to solve their own problems. You notice how they always have money for the things they want, a new gadget, a vacation, a luxury purchase, but somehow, they're always short on money for the things they need. And deep down, you start to question whether your kindness is actually making a difference. This is why saying no is an act of wisdom. It's not about being selfish. It's about understanding that helping someone doesn't always mean giving them what they ask for. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is allowing them to experience the consequences of their own choices. So how do you navigate this situation? How do you set boundaries without guilt? The first step is to shift your mindset. Instead of seeing money as the only way to help, think about how you can support them in a way that actually leads to growth. If they are struggling financially, instead of giving them cash, offer guidance. Help them create a budget. Point them toward resources that can help. Encourage them to take responsibility for their own financial future. The second step is to learn to say no with kindness and firmness. If they ask for money, you can say, "I'm not in a position to help financially, but I'm happy to offer advice." If they pressure you, you can remind them, "I have my own responsibilities to take care of." You don't have to justify, explain, or defend your decision. A simple no is enough. And the most important step? Let go of guilt. Understand that you are not responsible for fixing someone else's financial situation. Their struggles are the result of their own choices, habits, and actions, not yours. You can offer guidance, but you cannot control how they live their life. And that's okay. The Buddha taught that attachment to outcomes is what causes suffering. True generosity is about giving freely without expectation, without pressure, and without obligation. If helping someone is causing you stress, anxiety, or resentment, it's no longer generosity, it's self-sacrifice. And self-sacrifice, when done at the expense of your own well-being, is not an act of kindness. It is a form of self-neglect. At the end of the day, financial generosity should be like planting a seed. It should help someone grow, not keep them dependent. The goal is not to carry someone through life, but to give them the tools to walk on their own. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give a loved one is the opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet. 3. The always right relative, letting go of ego and control. We all know someone like this, the relative who seems to believe they have a monopoly on wisdom. The one who always has an answer for everything, even when no one asked for it. It doesn't matter what the topic is, your health, your finances, the way you spend your time, they are convinced they know better. And if you happen to have a different perspective, they shut it down, dismiss it, or worse, make you feel as if you're incapable of making the right decisions for yourself. At first, it might seem harmless, even well-intentioned. Maybe they genuinely believe they're helping. Maybe they think they're offering guidance, wisdom, or experience. But over time, the pattern becomes clear. Their words don't come from a place of care, they come from a need for control. They aren't just sharing advice, they are imposing their views. And little by little, this behavior starts chipping away at your confidence, your autonomy, and your peace of mind. After 60, this kind of relationship becomes even more draining. You've spent decades learning, experiencing, and making your own way in life. You've raised families, built careers, faced challenges, and grown through them. The last thing you need is someone constantly second-guessing your decisions, making you feel as if all that wisdom you've gained isn't enough. But when you're around someone who always assumes they know best, it can be difficult not to start doubting yourself. You begin to wonder, am I making the wrong choices? Do they see something I don't? Should I just go along with what they say? The problem is, the more you give in to their control, the less control you have over your own life. You begin making decisions not because they feel right to you, but because you want to avoid an argument. You start prioritizing their opinions over your own instincts. And before you know it, you find yourself living according to someone else's expectations, rather than your own truth. The Buddha taught that this kind of behavior is rooted in ego, atta, the deep attachment to one's own opinions and the need to be right. Ego is what convinces someone that their way is the only way. It's what makes them cling so tightly to their beliefs, refusing to even consider the possibility that someone else might have a different, equally valid perspective. And just as their ego keeps them trapped in a cycle of control, your own ego can keep you trapped in a cycle of frustration. The more you fight against their behavior, the more you try to prove them wrong, the more you engage in the same attachment to being right. So what's the solution? Let go of the battle. Not in defeat, but in freedom. You don't have to prove anything to them. You don't have to spend your energy trying to change their mind or convince them to respect your choices. Because the truth is, some people will never change, and that's okay. What you can change is how much power you give them over your emotions and your peace of mind. Start by recognizing what you can and cannot control. You cannot control their beliefs, their opinions, or their need to be right. But you can control your response. You can choose not to engage in arguments. You can choose to say, "That's an interesting perspective," and move on, rather than getting caught in a cycle of proving yourself. You can choose to trust your own wisdom, to remind yourself that your life experience is just as valid as theirs, even if they refuse to see it. And most importantly, you can set boundaries. You don't have to justify every decision you make. You don't have to explain yourself over and over just to get them to accept your choices. If they challenge you, you can simply say, "I've thought about it, and this is what works best for me." If they push further, you can remind them, "I appreciate your concern, but I'm comfortable with my decision." And if they continue to overstep, you can choose to limit how much influence they have in your life, whether that means seeing them less often, changing the subject when they start lecturing, or simply removing yourself from conversations that feel toxic. In Buddhism, one of the most profound teachings is impermanence, the understanding that everything in life, including people's beliefs, opinions, and personalities, is constantly changing. The person who insists they know everything today might soften with time. The relative who never listens to you now may one day come to respect your wisdom. But whether they do or not is not your burden to carry. Your responsibility is not to fix them, not to make them see things your way, but simply to live your own truth with grace and confidence. At the end of the day, what matters most is your own peace. Winning an argument won't bring you peace. Convincing someone else to respect your choices won't bring you peace. Letting go will. Letting go of the need to be understood. Letting go of the need to be validated. Letting go of the idea that their opinion has anything to do with your own happiness. Because the greatest wisdom is not found in being right, it's found in knowing when to walk away. 4. The guilt-tripping relative, escaping emotional manipulation. Guilt is a powerful emotion. It's the invisible chain that keeps people stuck in relationships, obligations, and expectations that no longer serve them. And for some relatives, guilt isn't just an occasional feeling, it's a tool, a strategy, a way to control. Unlike those who thrive on drama or demand authority, these individuals don't argue, shout, or force their opinions. Instead, they weave guilt into the conversation so subtly, so skillfully, that you don't even realize what's happening until you're already doing what they want again. It starts with a sigh, a disappointed look, a story about how much they've sacrificed for you, Maybe it's your parent who reminds you of all the nights they stayed up when you were sick, the money they spent on your education, the dreams they gave up so you could have a better life. Maybe it's a sibling who always brings up the favors they've done for you, making sure you feel obligated to return them even if you never asked for their help in the first place. Or maybe it's a distant relative who frames every request as a test of your love. If you really cared about me, you'd do this. I guess I'm just not that important to you. And that's the trap. The moment you start defending yourself, explaining, justifying, you've already lost. Because now, the conversation isn't about whether their request is reasonable, it's about proving your love, your loyalty, your worth. And no matter what you say, it will never be enough. The weight of guilt is heavy. It makes you feel like you owe them something, like you have to keep giving, sacrificing, agreeing just to be a good person. But here's the truth: love is not a transaction. Relationships should not be built on debt. And just because someone has done something for you in the past does not mean they have unlimited access to your time, energy, or resources forever. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering, and guilt tripping is one of the deepest forms of attachment. When someone uses guilt as a weapon, they are not acting out of love, but out of fear of losing control, fear of losing attention, fear of being alone. And the more you feed into that fear, the stronger their grip becomes. But escaping this cycle doesn't mean cutting people out of your life or becoming cold-hearted. It means recognizing manipulation for what it is and reclaiming your own emotional freedom. It means understanding that you are not responsible for someone else's happiness, no matter how much they try to make you believe otherwise. So how do you break free? First, see the pattern for what it is. The next time a relative tries to guilt trip you, pause. Instead of immediately reacting, ask yourself, are they making a request? Or are they using emotional pressure to get what they want? If it's the latter, remind yourself that their feelings are their responsibility, not yours. Second, set boundaries clearly and firmly. If they say, I can't believe you won't help me after all I've done for you, resist the urge to defend yourself. Instead, calmly state, I understand that you feel that way, but I have my own responsibilities too. If they say, you must not care about me, do not take the bait. Simply say, that's not true, but I can't do this right now. The key is to stand your ground without engaging in an emotional tug-of-war. And most importantly, let go of the need to please everyone. People who use guilt as a weapon often target those who care deeply, who want to be kind, who don't like disappointing others. But true kindness is not about self-sacrifice, it's about balance. It's about giving when you can, but not at the cost of your own well-being. It's about showing love, but not allowing yourself to be controlled by emotional manipulation. If someone only values you when you are meeting their demands, making them comfortable, or prioritizing their needs above your own, then their love is conditional. And conditional love is not real love. Real love respects boundaries. Real love does not demand, does not pressure, does not make you feel less than if you say no. At the end of the day, your worth is not measured by how much you sacrifice for others. It is measured by your ability to live with integrity, with kindness, but also with self-respect. You do not owe anyone your time, your money, or your peace of mind just because they ask for it. What you owe yourself, however, is the freedom to live your life without carrying the unnecessary weight of someone else's expectations. 5. The toxic caretaker, when help becomes control. Help can be a beautiful thing. When we're struggling, when we're overwhelmed, when we need support, it's comforting to know there are people in our lives who care enough to step in. A family member who offers help can feel like a blessing, someone who looks out for us, who makes life easier, who takes responsibilities off our shoulders. And for a while, it might feel good to lean on them. But what happens when that help slowly turns into control? When the kind gestures that once felt supportive start to feel restrictive, suffocating, even disempowering? What happens when help is no longer about care, but about taking over your life? It often starts in subtle ways. A relative offers to handle some paperwork for you. They accompany you to a doctor's appointment and take charge of the conversation. They tell you they're just trying to make things easier, so they start managing your finances, deciding who you should spend time with, even telling you what you should and shouldn't do. And since they've been so helpful in the past, it becomes harder and harder to say no. You don't want to seem ungrateful. You don't want to push them away. So you let them take on one more thing, and then another, until one day, you wake up and realize that somewhere along the way, you stopped making your own decisions. This kind of relationship is dangerous, not just because it limits your freedom, but because it erodes your confidence in yourself. The more you let someone else take control, the more you begin to question your own ability to manage things. Maybe they're right. You think, maybe I do need them to handle this for me. Slowly, doubt creeps in, and before you know it, you're no longer in charge of your own life, not because you can't be, but because someone else has convinced you that you shouldn't be. In extreme cases, this dynamic can even lead to elder abuse, where a well-meaning relative crosses the line from caregiving to control. When someone takes over your finances, isolates you from friends, or makes decisions on your behalf without your input, they are not helping you, they are taking away your autonomy. And the sad reality is, this can happen even with the best intentions. Some relatives may truly believe they are doing what's best for you. They may not see their behavior as controlling, but as necessary, responsible, even loving. But Buddhism teaches that true compassion empowers, not controls. The Buddha spoke of right intention, the idea that even good actions can become harmful when done with attachment, fear, or ego. Helping someone is only truly compassionate when it allows them to grow, not when it makes them dependent. If someone's help is making you feel smaller, weaker, or less capable, it is no longer help, it is a form of control. So how do you reclaim your independence? How do you break free from a toxic caretaker without damaging the relationship? The first step is to assert your own authority. The next time they try to take over a decision, gently but firmly remind them, I appreciate your help, but I can handle this myself. If they insist, repeat it. If they push harder, set clear limits. I know you care, but I need to be the one making this decision. The more consistently you assert yourself, the more they will have to accept that you are still in charge of your own life. The second step is to seek outside support if necessary. If a relative is making decisions for you that you're uncomfortable with, talk to someone you trust, a friend, a doctor, even a legal professional if needed. Sometimes, having an outside perspective can help you see the situation more clearly and give you the confidence to take back control. And perhaps most importantly, remind yourself that you have the right to make your own choices. Whether it's about your health, your money, your relationships, or how you spend your time, you are the only one who should have the final say. You do not owe anyone complete authority over your life, no matter how much they have helped you in the past. The best kind of help lifts you up, not holds you down. It supports your freedom, not takes it away. At the end of the day, love is not about control. It is about respect. And the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for others, is to live your life on your own terms. 6. The perfect image relative, the illusion of perfection. We all know someone like this. The relative who always seems to have it all together. The one who posts flawless family photos, shares stories of success, and somehow manages to make life look effortless. Their vacations are always breathtaking. Their children are always excelling. Their home is picture perfect. And when you talk to them, the conversation is rarely about anything real. It's about their latest accomplishments, the admiration they receive, the endless ways in which their life is thriving. At first, you might admire them, maybe even feel happy for them. But slowly, an uncomfortable feeling creeps in. You start to wonder, am I doing enough? Why does my life feel so ordinary in comparison? Why don't I have that kind of success? That kind of happiness? Without realizing it, you begin measuring yourself against their highlight reel. And no matter how content you were before, suddenly, your own life feels smaller, less exciting, less worthy. This is the trap of comparison, and it is one of the greatest sources of suffering. The Buddha taught that all conditioned things are impermanent. Everything we own, everything we achieve, even the way we are perceived by others, it is all temporary, fleeting, an illusion that will eventually fade. Yet, many people spend their entire lives chasing an image of perfection, convincing themselves that if they can just achieve more, have more, or appear more successful, they will finally be happy. But here's the truth: perfection is a mirage. It looks real from a distance, but the closer you get, the more you realize it was never real to begin with. People who project an image of having it all are often the ones who are struggling the most. The need to constantly prove one's happiness is often a sign of deep insecurity, a fear of being seen as flawed, ordinary, or less than perfect. They are not living for themselves, but for the approval of others. And while they may seem to have everything, what they are truly searching for is validation. But here's where it gets dangerous: if you allow yourself to be pulled into this illusion, you will never feel like you are enough. No matter how much you accomplish, no matter what you do, there will always be someone who appears to have more, to be doing better, to be living a life that seems just a little shinier, a little grander than yours. And if you keep chasing that image, you will never find peace. So how do you break free from this cycle? Stop comparing. Your life is not meant to look like anyone else's. You are not on the same path. You are not playing the same game. Your worth is not determined by your achievements, your possessions, or how impressive your life looks to others. It is determined by how you feel when you wake up in the morning, by the peace you carry in your heart, by the love you give and receive, by the small moments of joy that belong to you and you alone. Instead of focusing on what you don't have, practice gratitude for what you do have. Think of the quiet blessings in your life, the relationships that are real, the moments that bring you peace, the experiences that have shaped you. True happiness does not come from wealth, status, or external validation. It comes from contentment, from appreciating what is, rather than constantly reaching for what could be. And most importantly, embrace imperfection. The greatest freedom in life is to be exactly who you are, without apology, without the need to impress, without the fear of not being enough. When you stop performing, stop striving, stop worrying about how you measure up to others, you will finally discover the peace that comes from simply being. At the end of the day, the people who seem to have perfect lives are often the ones most afraid of reality. But you don't have to live in that illusion. You can choose to live authentically, fully, and with a heart unburdened by comparison. Because real peace does not come from perfection, it comes from the courage to embrace life exactly as it is. Life is too precious to be spent in relationships that drain us, weigh us down, or make us question our worth. By now, we've explored 6 types of relatives who, intentionally or not, can disrupt our peace. Those who thrive on drama, those who see us as an endless source of financial support, those who believe they always know best, those who manipulate through guilt, those who control under the guise of care, and those who project an illusion of perfection that makes us question our own lives. Each of these relationships, in its own way, can quietly steal our energy, our confidence, and even our joy if we allow it. But here's the beautiful truth: we don't have to allow it. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is the root of suffering, attachment to expectations, to approval, to relationships that no longer serve our highest good. But it also teaches us that wisdom and compassion must go hand in hand. Setting boundaries doesn't mean we stop loving our family. It means we learn to love them without sacrificing ourselves in the process. It means choosing understanding over resentment, peace over conflict, and presence over obligation. So as you move forward, ask yourself, who in my life truly brings me peace? Who do I feel lighter around? Who allows me to be fully myself? And just as importantly, who leaves me feeling drained? Who do I engage with out of guilt rather than love? Who do I find myself constantly trying to please, fix, or convince? The answers to these questions will show you where your energy is going and where it should stay. The beauty of life after 60 is that it belongs to you now, more than ever before. It is a time for inner freedom, for wisdom that only experience can bring, for joy that comes not from pleasing others but from truly embracing yourself. And that starts with choosing the relationships that nourish your soul, rather than the ones that deplete it. You are not here to fix everyone. You are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to live, to love, to be at peace. If this message resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you encountered any of these types of relatives? Have you struggled with setting boundaries? What has helped you find peace? Share your experiences in the comments below. I read every one of them. And this is a space for positivity, support, and encouragement. And before you go, if you found value in this video, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content that inspires growth, wisdom, and peace. Thank you for spending this time with me today. And remember, your life is yours to live. Make it a life that feels good in your heart.